Midianites held Israelites as captives. The Israelites then cried out to God when they were in trouble, and God sent a prophet that reminded them that their trouble was because of their rebellion against Him. So God raised up Gideon to deliver the Israelites from the Midianites. The Lord appeared as an angel to Gideon as he was threshing wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. They had become so oppressive to the Israelites that they had to live in caves and hide their food from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord told Gideon that he would use him to defeat the Midianites. Gideon wasn't quite sure how that was going to happen, since Gideon's family was the weakest of his tribe. Gideon was the weakest of his family. But God assured him that He would be with Gideon. Gideon brought an offering of a young goat to God. God showed Gideon His power by touching the meat with a wooden staff and immediately burning it up with fire that appeared. So Gideon knew that he was chosen by God. Gideon's first assignment was to tear down an altar to a false god and replace it with an altar to the real God. So Gideon did it, but the people weren't happy and were afraid of what Baal might do to them as a result of what Gideon did. Gideon's father talked some sense into them, though, and convinced them that if Baal was a real god, he could defend himself, and nothing happened to Gideon. So the Midianites began to join forces with the other tribes to the east of Israel, and things weren't looking good for the Israelites. It was time for Gideon to go into action. Before he did, he wanted to make sure one last time that he was hearing God correctly. He wanted God to give him a sign. He put a piece of wool fleece on the threshing floor and left it there overnight. He asked God to make it wet and the ground around dry in the morning. And sure enough, that's what happened. The next day, he asked the opposite. He laid the fleece in the threshing floor. He asked God to make it wet and the ground around dry in the morning. And sure enough, that's what happened. So Gideon was ready for battle and called upon everyone to fight. 23,000 men joined in to take on the Midianites. The Midianites were in number 135,000, but God told that He had too many men. How can you have too many men in battle, especially when you are already outnumbered? God wanted to be sure that the Israelites knew that it was He who delivered them, not by their own strength. So, God asked Gideon to ask the men, "If any one of you were afraid, go home." 20,000 were left. God told Gideon to lead his men to drink, and his men lapped the water like a dog. They stay. And if they got down on their knees and drank water out of cupped hands, they had to leave. So that left Gideon with only 300 men. Gideon learned that God had made the Midianites very afraid of the Israelites, so he used that against them. He had 300 men bring torches and clay jars and surround the Midianite camp. All at once, they broke the jars and shouted, "For the Lord and for Gideon!" and then blew 300 trumpets. The Midianites were surprised and afraid. They began to turn and fight each other. They fled, and God won the battle for Israelites.